How did the kid from your school die? Of all things. An unfortunate camping accident. This was before cell phones. Two friends went out for the weekend to a campground for some fishing over the weekend. When they didn't arrive home at the time they said they would. The parents called the provincial park to see if they were running a bit late. The weather wasn't great and the camp was about an hour away from town, so it was entirely possible they decided to stay another night and drive out in the morning instead. The park warden stumbled upon their campsite and found both of them dead in their shared tent. Turns out it was a cool night and they decided to run a small heater in the tent to be warm. But it was an old heater that didn't have a shut-off sensor built in. The heater ran all night while they were asleep, and since they didn't open the flaps on their tent for air circulation, because they wanted to trap the heat, the tent filled with carbon monoxide and suffocated them in their sleep. So sad. And a week before school too. Edit. Wow. I didn't realize just how sadly common this was. RIP to all who died. Playing along a fast-moving creek deep in the woods. First teen gets pulled under really fast. Second one immediately runs and dives in to find him. A minute later, first teen comes back up on the other side. Exhausted but thankfully unhurt. Guy who went in to find him was not coming back up. Was in the days before cell phones. Had to run a good mile back up the trail. Hop in the car. Drive to the nearby park ranger office, East Texas Big Thicket area. And report, get help. Along with guide rescuers. Took about 30 minutes total to get back out there to the accident. Still no sign of him. Rescue workers found that under the higher waters were tons of plant, tree debris everywhere. 2 days of removal while still trying to control fast-moving waters. His body was finally found. He had dived too deep trying to find the first friend. Getting trapped under the submerged branches. Without enough energy or breath to fight against the current to get out and back up. He was only 15. Testicular cancer at age 12. Really nice boy too. Fight with another kid. Got punched in the head. Hit the ground. Lights out. I was friends with both of them. Edit. For those asking what happened to the other kid. I don't know. I never saw him again. He was 11. Which is too young for juvenile detention in California. Edit. Disregard previous. I have a shit memory and moved around a lot. Here's what actually happened and the aftermath as reference in a later article about a similar incident at the same school. In October 1998, a schoolyard scuffle turned deadly when a 14-year-old boy became involved in a fight with 12-year-old Jared Schroeder. Reports at the time indicated the fight began when the older teen, who reportedly had a reputation for disruptive behavior and had a considerable history of disruptive behavior and significant problems with authority, wanted to play basketball and grabbed a ball from Schroeder, who was playing on one of the school's basketball courts. During the ensuing scuffle, the 14-year-old struck Schroeder on the side of the head, causing the younger boy to fall to the ground unconscious. He later died from injuries sustained in the assault. The suspect in that case was eventually found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Grade school. Rainy day. Bell rang and little girl panicked about being late ran out in front of a school bus. I saw it happen. Grade 5. He was playing with his little brother when they found their dad's duty pistol. Little brother shot him right between the eyes. Can't imagine how the little brother feels. Was about 50 years ago. Group of kids got skunk drunk and decided to take a ride down a notoriously winding road. One guy was standing in the back of the truck and fell out as they rounded one of the hairpin curves. Didn't make it. Suicide in the forest behind my garden. He was playing football and randomly passed out. Never woke up again. Kidnapped, raped and murdered by a serial pedophile killer nicknamed the Man with the Mask during school camp. We played together 3 days before. The killer had a spree over decades in different countries. Craziest part is, a soldier stationed close to the campsite saw the man and my friend in a car during a night run in the woods. Shortly after, the soldier was sent to Iraq. Years later after he returned, he heard about the case and remembered that night and the car model he saw. This clue led to the arrest, trial and sentence of a previous suspect. Autoerotic asphyxiation. Before the term was common knowledge. What they told us at the time was that he had hung himself. Peace out. Randy. Sorry your brother had to find you that way. Fun fact. I got suspended for 3 days for an unexcused absence attending his funeral. Just didn't wake up one morning. His mum found him dead in his bed. Turned out he had some condition they had no way of knowing about. Can't imagine anything worse as a parent. He and 2 friends were fucking around with a shotgun. It was loaded and killed him. One of the friends, the one holding the gun I believe, committed suicide a month or so later from the guilt. His girlfriend broke up with him. He didn't take it well. One afternoon after school, he walked down to the primary school near our high school and shot himself in the head right outside the entrance. Didn't know him well, but I don't think he had all that many friends. He always had sad eyes but was very nice whenever someone spoke to him. There was the one kid in elementary school who was riding his bike and got hit by a car. The school's infinite wisdom was to reiterate the dangers of not wearing your helmet while riding a bike. Fantastic memorial. There was the guy who drunk drove into a pole to avoid a squirrel. As the surviving passengers put it. But the hardest one to think about was my kindergarten classmate. She survived. But her baby sister was killed in the Oklahoma City bombing. Hit by a drunk driver while in a car with 4 people. W's ejected 30 feet from the backseat. Mons got up. Walked to a burning car. Actually ripped the door off. Pulled out all 3 other people and dragged them 10 to 15 away. Then collapsed. Succumbed to his injuries at the hospital later. Apparently had a broken femur, collarbone, wrist and arm, amongst other things. The other 3 only had minor injuries. And the car exploded like 3 to 5 minutes after he pulled them out. Dude was actually a hero. Like 5 of them died of drunk driving accidents. 3 of them at one time. Little redneck school in the middle of nowhere. Apparently people seem to think drinking and driving is the only way to have fun. I don't think anyone I went to school with is dead yet, but I know one of my old classmates is on death row in Florida, so that's gotta count for something. 3 people died shortly after graduation in a head-on collision with a semi-truck. Edit. Since I've had a couple people ask. This was in northern CA. Sacramento area. Edit again. Upvote you, mGenerix's response to this comment to visibility. That chain has the whole story complete with a fun guessing game. Fell off a jet ski and then got hit by it when the driver turned around. Drowned. An electrician screwed up rewiring her family's house so a live wire was touching a metal pipe connected to the bath. Her mum was wearing rubber work boots when she filled the bath so wasn't electrocuted, but she must have accidentally brushed against the tap or gone to add some more water while submerged and was killed instantly. We lived in a very small town where everyone knew each other, so it really rocked our community. She was in the grade above me, so would have been around 10 to 11. She was in the 5th grade and needed a blood transfusion. Her parents were Jehovah's Witnesses and refused the procedure. I don't know what condition she had, but she died due to lack of medical care. Try making sense of that at 11 years old. Massachusetts, 1995. Self-inflicted shotgun to the head. She was mercilessly bullied throughout school. Junior year of high school, and it was too much. The school and diocese consistently turned blind eye to bullying and other disciplinary complaints towards children from priority families. The priest had the audacity at the funeral to talk about the selfishness and sin of suicide. This one guy at my high school tried asking out this girl. The girl's brother and a group of his friends jumped him. Did some unspeakable things to him, and the entire school found out about it. He was missing from school for months because he was in the hospital. Eventually he came back to school. But people stared at him. It must have ate away at him because during the summer, his family went on a cruise and the guy jumped off the cruise ship and drowned. Wrestling team bully with anger management issues punched an elderly man in a road rage incident, and the elderly man shot him dead and was acquitted as it was deemed self-defense. Older student broke into the chemistry lab. Joking around with his friends. Sniffed some chemical that I can't remember. I was at my break and just heard the sirens. Got his head blown apart with a shotgun by another kid from my school. In childbirth she was just 14. In grade 11, a kid in my class died in a motorcycle accident. His cycle slipped, and he got hit head-on by a semi in front of his parents. He wasn't popular though, so when it happened, It was just a quick announcement at the start of class. And then life moved on. Several weeks later, a popular kid was drinking and driving and was in a near-fatal accident of his causing. That was a week-long tragedy in the school. Even the fucking teachers joined in. Fuck CHSS. In high school, a girl in the year ahead went missing. There were flyers posted for volunteers to help search for her. It was understood that she wasn't the type to run away. Her mom was out of her mind with worry. A few weeks later, her stepfather was arrested. It seems he'd sexually abused her. And then switched from her to her little sister. She threatened to tell. And he murdered her. Then he drove her body out somewhere to dump it. With her little sister in the car. She was too traumatized to remember much. Apparently, he put her body in a dumpster. And it ended up in a landfill somewhere. They got a confession out of the guy by putting him in Gen Pop and letting the other prisoners know what he was in for. He lasted less than 2 days. Her name was Debbie Moberg. He was kidnapped in 1989 and his body wasn't found until 2016. His mother went on to start the Crimes Against Children Registration Act in 1993. 260Z wrapped around a tree 20 feet up in the air after running off an embankment going over 100 miles per hour. Front and rear bumpers on passenger side were touching. They used 2 tow trucks to get the car to slide down the tree. Needless to say, closed casket funeral. Drinking in a car with 3 friends, and when the police came they fled. Driving at a high rate of speed. They missed the turn when the road made a T. There was a massive tree directly behind the double arrow sign and they wrapped the car around it. To make the situation worse, the police arrived and refused help to the screaming teens until after they interrogated them. 3 of the boys died and the 4th was in a body cast for 6 months and in rehabilitation for years with permanent disabilities. The parents sued the police for not helping the boys and allowing them to bleed out. The parents won and the disabled boy has enough money to cover his care for the remainder of his life. The boys did break the law and were stupid, but for the police to tell them that they are going to allow them to die if they don't answer their questions and then they died was inexcusable on any level, and they should have been charged, not just fired. In middle school, my neighbor accidentally shot and killed his best friend while hunting. Years later he was beheaded by the Taliban along with 2 English men. Unbearably sad. Him and his dad fell through the ice in their ice vehicle and they drowned. His brother shot him in the head while he slept. Tried to kill his parents too. End-stage renal disease. She was doing good for a couple of years and waiting for a transplant while getting regular dialysis, but ended up passing away in 11th grade. Polio. After the summer holiday in 1955. She just never returned to school. Suicide. Sadly, we had 2 die from suicide and 1 in a drunk driving accident. All within 3 months of each other. That was awful. Multiple kids at my school died. 1 committed suicide in his car. 1 died of cancer. 1 jumped in front of a train after an argument with his parents. 1 died of kidney disease and the last one I can remember died in a car accident. Super sad. Toxic shock. Car accident. Leukemia. Motorcycle accident. She made fun of a Cholo's, Latino gangbanger, nickname and he shot her in the face. It was a stupid nickname. And she was bitch to everyone constantly. But she was like 14 to 15 and she never got a chance to be better. A football player's heartbeat was slowing and there wasn't a defibrillator nearby. Now several years later there's a defibrillator by the locker rooms and a plaque to remember him above it. Brain cancer. Age 11. Hit by a motorhome while riding her bike. Age 9. Cancer and aplastic anemia. Age 11. Played chicken with a semi-truck. Ages 17 to 19. 6 of them. Car accident. Age 16. Drowned. Age 18. Suicide. Age 17. Murdered by their dad in a custody dispute that ended in a murder-suicide. Ages 5 and 7. In high school. Girl who sat next to me for more than 2 years. We were seated in alphabetical order, went to a party one weekend senior year. Got drunk and decided to walk home in the dark on nearby railroad tracks. Run over by a train and died. Her seat sat empty for the remainder of senior year. Almost 40 years later and I still remember her name and exactly what she looked like, before the incident. One guy died on his birthday. He was getting chased by his friends for birthday beats. Nothing really bad, just little roughhousing. So they are running around in the school all playfully and he just collapsed and turned blue pretty quick. He apparently had some heart issue that he was unaware and his heart just stopped. I believe he was like 15 or something. Super sad. A girl got squished in the Carousel of Progress at Disneyland. It was a huge story at the time. There was a boy from a family of alcoholics. Parents divorced. He lived with a mom who was a very heavy drinker and a stepdad. Stepdad had a son who spent quite some time in mental facilities and rehab because he fucked up his brain with drug use. The son eventually came home to live with his father and my classmate. One time the classmate accidentally saw his stepbrother sniffing glue from a bag. Stepbrother got mad, poured kerosene on him and lit him up. When his mother saw her child was burning, she jumped out the window and ran away while his younger siblings were trying to put out the fire. Unfortunately, once they managed to, he was already dead. He froze to death in his sleep after passing out in the snow. It was a school trip with his class and they had some beers, but probably some of the first few times they tried alcohol. It was devastating. They were moving from one house to another and he had said he needed a break in between, but everyone forgot or just thought he's in another house. It sounds like an obvious mistake, but it's not necessarily that cold, even if it's snow, especially after a drink. To lie down and chill on a snow pile with a good jacket is no problem, but if you pass out and forgotten, well damn. Friend from high school died his freshman year of college at a fraternity hazing. The frat was already banned from having any events on campus. So the hazing ritual was done off campus at some house they rented off Airbnb. Guy was a good man. Always nice to others and had a great sense of humor. I don't think he had much experience with alcohol cause he turned blue after the hazing and was found unresponsive on a couch sometime later. His frat decided to quietly drop him off to the hospital and left him there all alone. He died about 4 days later in the hospital. He was hooked onto a bunch of machines and sadly didn't recover. The alcohol had done irreparable damage to his liver. His parents sued the university. But the courts ended up ruling in favor of the school. Aside from the legal battle, his parents lost their youngest child. That's never easy to process. Almost 7 years later and I still think about him from time to time. I wanted to attend his funeral, which was on a Friday. But I had a final exam for my German class and couldn't reschedule it without rescheduling my summer break traveling plans. I regret not attending the funeral. It would have given some sort of closure. Being with friends and having time to just be in each other's company. Primary school. Cancer, still in kindergarten. High school. Also cancer, 17 years old. Seriously. Fuck cancer. In high school, I had a friend that had a troubled family life. He was living with foster parents and ran away back to his family on the reserve. They were First Nations, Cree specifically. He got picked up by our equivalent of CPS and was being transported back to his foster family's house in town. While on the highway, he jumped out of the car while it was traveling at a low speed. He got hit by another car in the oncoming lane going approximately 100 kilometers per hour. Looking back on it, 20 years later, it is still painful. He was such a good guy. It breaks my heart to think of how much he missed his family and was willing to risk his life to go back to them, despite the abuse and drug use. He just didn't feel like he belonged in his foster family's house. They were decent people, just not his family. There was another kid I went to school with, but barely knew. She had a few disabilities and health issues. She passed from some kind of heart condition to fake. One was killed in an auto accident. Another was killed while vacationing in Mexico. Another died from sniffing glue. This is such a profoundly sad thread. He was playing inside a cardboard box on an industrial wharf when a truck backed over the box. Even at a young age, I felt very sorry for truck driver. He thought the box was moving because of the wind. Hung himself. I was really good friends with him since maybe 5th grade, but I knew him since kindergarten. We weren't talking that much for a bunch of 9th grade, but we really started talking again and then he died. I was doing multiple school projects with him at the time, but I ended up not having to do them. I was told by my crying mom, and my dad was pretty much crying because of me having to deal with that. There were no clues, or did he ever say anything about his thoughts? Before that year started though, his mom told my mom that he's been having bad anxiety and maybe to not talk to him. He was happy to talk anyways. It was a big story and there were people from schools away who knew about it. And the classes I was with him in were pretty much pure sadness and crying. The English class was the worst though. I was crying with my head down on my desk, but the co-teacher in that class comforted me. I worked with her until I graduated last year. God bless her soul. Article about him that I feel is worth looking at, I guess. A girl in my middle school died after giving birth. Really sad. 3 kids died during my last year of high school. First was from a car accident. Second was from hypothermia and the third died in her sleep. I never got the explanation for it. Safe to say we were all in a weird headspace that year. Meningitis outbreak. All the schools in the area had to get inoculated. He and a small group of kids ditched class and were riding around in the back of a pickup goofing off. The driver hit the gas and he flipped out of the back of the truck and landed on his head, breaking his neck. His mom was the 911 dispatcher that took the initial call. Heroin overdose. This was pre-fentanyl crisis sometime in like the early 2000s. Only 3 of us cared that she passed, sad face. Jesus Christ, put the gun away. It's not loaded, watch. Points gun at the one who said to put it away. Bang. This will get buried, but it's traumatized me for as long as I can remember. When I was in kindergarten, a boy from my class was carrying a big glass jar while walking down the stairs. I think it was for lightning bugs or something like that. He tripped halfway down and fell on top of the jar, piercing his heart and lungs. He was killed instantly. I never forgot him. And to this day I will never carry anything glass walking up and down the stairs. Heart attack. Seemingly healthy. Had an undiagnosed heart defect. It manifested while he was playing a pickup basketball game with the econ teachers. Their brother murder-suicided the whole family. There are a few. One kid when I was a junior and he was a sophomore was riding a quad and didn't see a cable across the dirt path. I know a couple of his friends who were riding with him. Apparently, he got almost completely decapitated. One of them was playing tennis and just dropped dead. He was part of a group that liked to experiment with ecstasy, and the thought is he took too much of it and it fucked with his heart. Not sure if that is true or not, but he was very popular and the whole school was pretty sad. I played baseball with him when I was younger and my family was friends with his family, so it sucked a lot. One of my best friends was killed in a work accident after she graduated. I was a year behind her and so was a lot of her friends, so that one hit our group really hard. Someone I went to school with got killed by police a few years ago. He was the dumbest person I had ever met, but somehow still had all C's in school. Never once saw him do any schoolwork in any of the classes we shared. He also happened to be the best athlete my school had ever seen and still holds football records 15 years later. He was killed because he assaulted a bus driver. When the police arrived, he started fighting them. They tried tasing him after trying to just take him down. They tried pepper spray after that, then they used batons. He took one of their batons from the cops and started hitting them with it, so they shot him. It led to the mayor, who was a distant relative of his, leading a protest against the cops. It was a clearly justified shooting and there was video of the whole thing thanks to some people recording, who also happened to yell at the cops after because they were idiots. The guy that died was also a massive asshole to me and my friends in school, but even we felt sorta bad for him. He was mentally ill from drugs and homeless, but his family acted like they loved him and cared for him, but they didn't give a shit about him once he lost his scholarship for football. Was shot by police after stabbing a girl and her mother. The two were recent immigrants. He had been stalking the girl for months apparently. I still think about how he had a crush on me in elementary school. Quite a few kids I went to school with died. But one still sticks out to me the most. The older brother of a girl in my class. He was a couple years older, so we went to the same school. I live in the middle of nowhere and we have heavy snow for most of the year. So snowmobiling is a really popular recreational activity. Apparently this guy had crashed into a tree and a branch went right through his head and killed him instantly. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, Subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.